You're listening to the Martial Arts Lifestyle Podcast, where each week we have a conversation with everyday martial arts practitioners. From the first motivation to train, martial arts enriches our lives and becomes a lifestyle. Welcome to the individual stories of those martial artists living that lifestyle. You are listening to the abbreviated version. For those of you checking this out on YouTube, please hit the like and subscribe buttons. Full-length versions of this podcast can be subscribed to at our Patreon page, is www.patreon.com/malmag. Or individual full-length episodes can be purchased at our Gumroad page at malmag.gumroad.com. Before we begin this week's program, I would like to remind you to check out martialartslifestylemagazine.com to see articles on the martial arts. Click on the Store tab to find products for the practice of Southeast Asian martial arts, featuring Timmy B's brand sticks. Check out the Courses tab, currently featuring a course on the Dos Manos method of the Filipino martial arts. Also check out our Places to Train page, featuring top quality martial art academies from around the world. And of course, check out our events page for seminars and events coming up around the world. To see your school listed in our Places to Train page or your event on our events calendar, contact us at malmagonline@gmail.com. This week I connect to San Diego on Zoom, and I'm talking with Rafael Gutierrez, the karate doctor. We talk about how he got into martial arts, his taking a train around California and training in different spots, and how that ended up being a book. A very cool story about his original karate teacher meeting Bruce Lee, and how his profession of being a biology teacher relates to his practice of karate, and much more. Sit back and enjoy. Welcome to the Martial Arts Lifestyle Podcast, and we're here in Season 3. And just before I got started today, I looked at an email, came in from FeedSpot, saying that the Martial Art Lifestyle Podcast is actually in the top 70 martial art podcasts. It's ranked number 35. So this was kind of a great, little thing for this little podcast that I haven't even really been considering, honestly, how big the impact is outside, because it's just this great little project. And I get to talk with people like my guest today, actually, who is someone I've known for quite a while. We met on this wonderful social media internet thing, and he ended up taking a trip up from San Diego, which was part of a larger thing he was doing, and took a lesson with me, and we'll get into all that. This gentleman is an author and a professor of biology and has a YouTube channel and writes articles. And he's also known as the karate doctor, I believe. So,
right. Sometimes.
Welcome, Rafael Gutierrez, to the show. It's a pleasure to have you, sir.
Pleasure to be here. Thanks. Good seeing you again.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've gone back and forth about stuff, and this whole thing. I think I talked to you when you came up about sort of the larger idea of what this whole thing is, and right now the podcast end of it is sort of taken off, and I'm still kind of figuring out how I want to do the whole online magazine version of it. But we've discussed doing all kinds of interesting things, kind of combining the areas of expertise that you have that you're already kind of doing with your stuff online. And you were telling me a really interesting story before we quite got started. But let's start with you, how you got involved in martial arts.
All right. So, like pretty much all of us who are of a certain age, I probably first real exposure to martial arts was watching The Karate Kid back in the 80s. And, I always wanted to go into it, but I guess my mom was afraid that I was going to be joining Cobra Kai at the time. And
oh my God.
So, it's like I ended up joining little programs here and there. I ended up taking a karate class, which at the time, pretty much if it was martial arts, it was karate, it seems. And then in a local community college, then when I went to college, I did some Muay Thai. Had a friend who was Filipino, and he introduced me to Eskrima. Very little. It was one of those things, how much do you actually train when you're in college type of thing.
Right. Yeah.
And when I went to med school, one of the students there saw that we were all expanding more than our knowledge, and we decided to start doing karate with him pretty much daily. He was a gentleman named Cyrus Gordon, was originally from Hawaii, And it's one of the things that I think is funny because he was a lot older than I was, and he actually talked about the thing we were mentioning with some of the older generations. There was almost more of a connection with other arts. Being in Hawaii, he talked
Uh,
about how, he would train in Okinawan karate. Then he would actually uh, go to Filipino communities, and it's like they'd share and things there. Then the Chinese community there had their own thing, and but they'd all come together, and it's like, yeah, we all do martial art. Let's see what everyone else is doing.
right.
Later on, I met a gentleman named Prince Loeffler, who in LA, who actually had a lot of experience with actually a lot of different martial arts, and I trained with him. And eventually, I met a gentleman named Kensei Taba, who had, after the death of his teacher, had made his own style slash organization. And I think I told you about him. He came to the U.S. back in the late 60s, early 70s, can't remember the exact day, and was interviewed by Black Belt magazine. So at the time, as you know, Guru Inosanto was actually pretty big in that community.
Hmm.
He actually mentioned how invaluable Ed Parker was because he did a lot of translations for everyone. Santos, he actually got a
You know,
chance.
that was something new you told me earlier that it might be interesting out here. I've known a bit about Ed Parker, just kind of obviously being Dan Santos' student and all that. And
Right.
Ed Parker's daughter came in and actually interviewed Guru for something. So I learned a lot of interesting things about it, but I didn't know that he spoke Japanese. And so that was like something new to learn from you
Yeah,
there.
to be honest, he actually says he did a lot of translations for them, and he said one of the problems is, as he did do the translations, many times when they were interviewing someone, he would kind of sit back trying to get everything done properly, and so people a lot of times they would say, "Oh, well, he just did this," and it's like, no, he did that because he could. It wasn't that, oh, he was just, doing something because he wanted to stay out of it. It was, you have a skill, you try to share it.
Right. Right.
All right. And there's actually a story he told me through a translator, of course, about when he met Bruce Lee one time, and he said that Bruce Lee saw him do something, and he asked him about it. He said the next day, Bruce Lee was like, "Hey, look at all the new things you could do with this." And Taba Sensei told me he was really impressed by that. Just because he's like, I've never seen someone pick something up in like 5-10 minutes, and then the next day not only master it but made it completely his own. Which it's one of those things that a lot of people hear the stories of Bruce Lee from, oh, this happened in a movie, or this happened this, it happened from, but they don't hear these little stories that really are more impressive to me because it shows who, in part, how people actually viewed martial arts before. And now, we do have a lot of
Right.
people who, it's like, we have the ultimate martial art and we do it right, everyone else does it wrong. And it's like, yeah, that's not what they were saying before.
No, yeah, I think you're right. I mean, there's a couple things there. I mean, one, this is not an uncommon story that I've heard about Bruce Lee. So I've heard this from a few people that knew him, and then even secondhand a few more through Guru Dan, that this was something that happened with him on not only say a martial art like technique, but this was Guru Dan bringing him something like the kicking shield that everyone uses in martial arts these days, and it really was it's something that they use for practicing tackling in football
Right.
because me and some friends worked with the UCLA football team a little bit, and we were looking at sort of the original tackling thing, going, okay, this is kind of cool. We're messing around with these football players are all looking at us like, what are you guys doing? And we're like, well, well, we're doing this, and we're going to show you some of that stuff. But it's, I guess he took this to Bruce Lee, who looked at it and said, "Oh, this looks kind of silly." Threw it in the corner of his garage, and then when Guru Dan came back in 4 days, he had complete sets and everything, all kinds of training methodology on it, and he had done that with several things, focus mitts, the whole deal. When he would bring him something, he would go away for a few days, and next thing you know, Bruce Lee's got this whole like PhD level understanding of the thing and routines and stuff. So it's a story that's been repeated enough that you go, okay, there's some validity to it, and some,
Right.
that's there, which is, a really fascinating thing.
Yeah, no, I mean, to me, it was one of those things where, the reason he told that story is he pretty much said, look, you hear people badmouth people all the time now, and they don't know what happened. And a lot of times he said, it's not the person the high up who actually did that. It's usually the high ups,
Henchman,
third,
yeah,
fourth generation student who's like, oh no, my teacher's the best of them all. Everyone else
yeah,
doesn't. And it's like, that's not really what the guys who knew the people that were saying that.
right. There was certainly a more of a camaraderie, I think,
Mhm.
back in those days. I've had the great pleasure of being able to sit with Mike Stone, who I know is a karate guy, right? And
Right, right.
he lives in the Philippines, so I've actually been to his home, sat with him in his living room, and talked with him, and and he told me about his time with Bruce Lee and stuff, and yeah, and it isn't a lot of what the attitude you see now. These people were friends, and they were exchanging ideas and training methods. And yeah, they were young. There was probably some cockiness, and there was there was competitiveness, and there was whatever. But he freely admitted to that too. He's just like, look, we were young. We were all cocky. We were all somewhat arrogant. But at the same time, that's what made them all better, because
Right,
they had camaraderie, but they had competitiveness and all that. And now it's just like it's venomous, these days.
right, right. Well, I mean, even within, I actually have seen this. I saw it with when what happened with my teacher. He was actually the president of his and highest ranked of the organization his teacher belonged to when back in Okinawa. And when his teacher died, the organization pretty much tried to wash away any contributions he's made to it, which is
Wow.
funny because you still, you can't, there's still paper, there's still where you can
Yes.
see. And it's like, oh yeah, he was, well, I mean, you think about it, there's a black belt article with Taba Sensei being sent to the US. You don't send, just anyone over.
Right.
But it's like the organization he used to belong to has literally tried to erase that he was ever part of the organization.
Wow.
And it's like it's one of those things where, well, you're pretty much erasing even if someone was your student and
Yeah.
they move on, it's like, yeah, yeah, I taught them. You could say that, whatever you want after that, but that they learned from you, or that they did something, is hard to erase, especially now where, we have information. Like I tell all my students at college, we have all the information known to man at
Oh
the
yeah.
palm of our hands. It comes out.
Yeah. Right. And even now, because of how easy this is, like for you and I to sit on like this, there's a freaking phone and recording device, camera and recording device on your phone. If you said something, it's on record
All right.
probably. So it's like, yeah, it'll come back to haunt you if you later on go,
Right.
I didn't say that. But I guess with all the AI now and stuff, you might even have the ability to say, no, that's been faked. But
Right. Right.
there'll be ways to figure that out. That thing
Yeah.
is not good enough yet. I mean, from my 30 years in TV, I can listen to even any television now where there's edits to in a interview.
Mhm.
Usually it's meant to clean up uhs and
Right.
uhs and stuff like that, stutters and what have you. But I can hear those edits. The average person might not, but I mean, I've done it, so
Mhm.
I know what it sounds like. But so there's going to be experts who are going to be able to tell that apart for a while, because it's not quite good enough yet. But you know,
Right.
still, it's like you said, there's plenty of documentation of everything. And here's the crazy thing. So, I spend most of my time in the world of JKD, Filipino martial arts, Southeast Asian kickboxing styles, and what have you. And the same thing is going on in the
Right.
JKD world. And you've got, people trying to erase Dan Inosanto. You've got people trying to erase this other guy or this guy. And what's funny is how the people in the groups lament about, this is why no one takes JKD seriously, because blah blah blah. And I'm like, we're not the only art that's going
No,
on.
yeah,
Like, this is common, unfortunately, in the martial art world.
well,
So
I mean, that's one of the things is yeah, it's the thing I tell people. There's nothing wrong with making money with martial arts. There's nothing
yeah,
wrong,
right.
but there's a big issue where you can actually make money in martial and be honest with what people are actually selling.
Right.
The problem is when people are trying to, make money at all costs, the dishonesty that comes out is actually kind of a bit of an issue.
Hmm.
And, there are people who, I've met a lot of people who actually were involved in some martial art. They're amazing martial artists, but because of the politics, they've retreated. And
Yeah.
what's really interesting is when you meet them, they're like, yeah, here, I'm going to teach you what, most people are trying to get me to, when people come in, they want me to teach them, but I won't do it because they don't want to, if they don't want to accept me, I'm not going to accept them. And it's
Right.
like, that's kind of a rough way to, in many ways I understand it, but it's
Right.
also, there's a lot that can be lost because, if you lose, I mean, you think about it, if you lose a student because they are upset with politics, it's kind of a sad loss.
Right. Right. Well, and the other, I've got a lot of colleagues that dear friends in these arts that say the same thing. A lot of them want to back off JKD because of all the nonsense surrounding. But I think they still want to teach it. They just kind of don't want to make a big deal out of it, I guess.
Right.
I mean, so you got that, which is sad. I'm like, look, man, you train this. I wouldn't back off of it because other people are acting the way they act.
Right.
You do you is
Yeah.
my philosophy of it. But the other thing too is, you got people that have knowledge of the history and things, and they're backing off from stuff because there's a lot of misinformation. And the thing that concerns me there too is like, look, I understand not getting in the sewer and fighting with people,
Right. Right.
and I'm retreating from that. I was happy to get into it if they're attacking. You attacked my Sifu, so I jumped back. But then I realized, one, I'm in the sewer with a bunch of
Right.
sewer rats, and the others, they are sewer rats. They're not really people that are all that important. However, on something like social media, it's reaching a lot of people, and there's a lot of talk. So there's, it's the worst spreader of misinformation, and it's because it moves so fast, and people didn't get the. I mean, and what I like is you're a scholar. You're at PhD level. So when I talk about these things, you totally get it. People haven't learned how to disseminate what a good source is from a faulty source, and how to actually seek truth in information that's going out there, because we do have a First Amendment that allows pretty much any garbage to fly out there, which is fine. I'd rather have it that way than
Right.
completely censored. But you do have to do the job of what a librarian used to do. You could go
Right.
to the library because a library had a librarian that made sure all the shit wasn't out. It wasn't in there. Anything that's a bad source just isn't in a library. But the
Right.
internet doesn't have that filter. So you have to learn how to filter that yourself. And that was an interesting thing for me when I was in Central Asia, teaching kids how to write essays and stuff. Was okay, you have to learn to be your own librarian here. We have to determine good sources from bad. And it's a daunting task. And it's like, now it's just with these bots and everything else, like I've never seen such a mechanized uh, effort at spreading absolute disinformation.
Right. Well, the other thing is there's people who don't see that there's a level of knowledge that you can get you know, from different things. And I actually am asked sometimes, well, what do I think of something that uses Chinese medicine? And it's like, well, I don't know Chinese medicine, so I'm not
Right.
going to, I can't touch that. It's like that's
Yeah.
their special. They
Yeah,
have
and
their,
that's a great honest answer, where you're putting your ego aside, going, look, I'm a PhD, you're a PhD or a doctor, so
right,
you're considered a smart person by anybody, but you start realizing the farther up you go in specialization that, yeah, my knowledge is very good in something that's pigeonholed, and when we get outside of it, I'm going to tell you, I don't know that. And
right.
that's a tough thing, I think, for a lot of people.
Right. Well, and that's actually one of the things that does happen a lot, and you see it in the news. They'll put someone, oh, so and so's doctor, so and so, and they have a
Right.
doctorate, but they may have a doctorate in English, let's say, and they're talking
Yeah.
about viral infections, and it's like
Yeah. Yeah.
there's a little bit, I wouldn't tell someone what Chaucer meant in a certain phrase
Right.
because I didn't study, I have I
You're
might
being
read it
nice.
for
Talk about all
fun,
those
but
chiropractors that came out there and told us about COVID. Like, okay, you're pretty good at aligning a spine. Maybe you should stick there. Virology is not your thing.
right. But and the thing it's the problem is when people don't they hear doctor and people
Right.
think, well, they're doctors, so they know they're probably a specialist.
Yeah.
And it's we get out if it's like someone like me talking about Jeet Kune Do. I would say, well, this is a little bit I know. It's only maybe 2 or 3 days worth of information. That's as far as I can go.
Wow. Okay, you brought up something really interesting there too. So we can apply what you were talking about earlier to martial art, and we see this all the time where, because I think the nature of the sewer and the clickbait and everything else, you see people a lot of, what do they call, the bullshito type thing.
Bushido, yeah.
So you've got people that are, I don't know, let's pick I don't know, we'll pick something like they're an MMA guy,
Mhm.
and they're all of a sudden commenting on Taekwondo, and you're like, yeah, okay, I can see where you're commenting, but the problem is you don't study that particular thing.
Right. Oh yeah.
So maybe you don't know exactly what's going on. You know what it appears like, but I won't comment on Taekwondo to a large extent, even though I've got some experience with it. I've never ranked in it. I've never taken any amount of formal lessons. I've had several friends in high school that's what they did. I was an Okinawan karate guy at the time and kickboxer. We got together and we trained. So I learned a lot of their kicks and a lot of things like that, because we exchanged stuff. We were looking to make each other better. We were looking to train for fun. So I've got some knowledge of some things, but I would not make any kind of
Oh yeah.
expert comment on that martial art, other than, hey, I know it's Korean, I know this, and that's more coming from basically being a kind of a martial art journalist. But I'm
Right.
gonna cut, to the, like, look, that you need to ask these guys. I'll put you in touch with Taekwondo people to actually give you a better comment beyond that.
Oh
And so,
yeah. No,
and that happens a lot, I'm seeing, and it's kind of like, maybe back off that, if you're going to be a martial artist, like what we think martial artists should be. But then again, they're looking to probably be entertainers, or, like you say, even potentially make a living. But
potentially that's a key word.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And this concludes the abbreviated version of the podcast. Please consider supporting the program by going to www.patreon.com/malmag and subscribing to the show. You can also purchase this individual episode or any individual episode at our Gumroad page. That's malmag.gumroad.com. Thank you for listening to this episode with Rafael Gutierrez. Coming up next week, I connect to New Jersey and we talk with Dan Pagan. Our Malmag online store at martialartslifestylemagazine.com has a full selection of Timmy B's brand sticks for FMA and Krabiker Bong. Timmy B's brand now selling in Japan as well. Beautiful Timmy B's brand shirts and Dos Manos shirts are available. We also have sarongs, malongs, and wooden training knives. An online course in the Dos Manos method for FMA is available under the Courses tab. More courses coming soon. Check out the Places to Train tab to find schools near you, and click on the Events Calendar page to see what seminars and events are happening all around the world. And of course, visit our main page for articles on the martial arts. Music by Arthur J. Martial Arts Lifestyle Magazine and the Martial Arts Lifestyle Podcast are trademarked and copyrighted by TNT LLC.